So my name is Frida Hök. I have a PhD in environmental science. I've been working mainly on policy issues regarding chemicals. Worked on ROS. I worked with endocrine disrupting chemicals, and also from a consumer perspective on chemicals. But that's all for me. But thank you. I would like to start with that, to thank Commission ECHA to invite me to speak here today. And at ChemSec, we are a bit concerned with the proposals from the Commission to streamline and simplify the process. We see that there are definitely room for improvements, and it's absolutely necessary. But some of the suggestions makes us very concerned, and I think that's why I'm invited to speak here today. Okay, just very short about ChemSec for those of you who haven't heard about us before. We are NGO working to eliminate the use of hazardous chemicals. We get our funding from charity funds and from governments. And we try to offer concrete tools and highlight positive examples. And one of the tools that you might have heard of is a SIN list, where we use the criteria set out in REACH to list chemicals that sort of apply to these criteria. And the SIN list is quite well known and quite well used list to sort of be aware and prepared for REACH. So that was very short about ChemSec. We also have one of our core groups that we cooperate with are downstream users. So we have a business group, and these are the ones in our business group, so big companies. And we also have, because we like to get an understanding from the difficulties companies will see, the opportunities they see with different policies, and how they move forward. And many of our companies in our business group, they are front runners in many ways. They have a very progressive chemical management, and they, comply with REACH is their baseline. They work hard on being very much ahead of legislation. They use not just the candidate list for their substitution efforts, they use the SIN list as well, many of them, to, at an early stage, focus on substitution, because they see market opportunities with this approach, and they also see that it's most cost effective for them to start early so they can substitute when it's suitable for them. Unfortunately, many of these companies are not heard in this discussion. None of them are here today. So we also like to bring in their perspective, and hopefully I can give some of their perspective today, their concerns with REACH and how they see it and how they see the process, and not to forget them in this discussion. I think that's very important. Okay, just to remind us, we saw this yesterday, and I know you all know this by heart, of course. So Article 55 in REACH, which says that risks from substances are very high concern and are properly controlled, and that these substances are progressively replaced by suitable alternative substances or technologies where these are economically and technically viable. So, from our point of view, it's very clear that substitution is a main issue here. It's a driver, and that the candidate list and also authorization drives innovation and substitution. But of course, when you need, you should apply for authorization. It's not that we don't want applications for authorization. Of course, in some cases where you don't find these alternatives, you should be able to apply for authorization and do that in an effective manner. And from my point of view, why is substitution then the best option? Well, it's the most efficient way to control the risk of hazardous chemicals. You don't have to apply for authorization, because if you have the possibility to substitute, you will save a lot of time, effort, and money not having to apply. We also see it as a more long-term solution. even if you will get 7 or 10 or 12 years to substitute to a good substitute, it's a more long-term solution. And as our business group, as I said before, they see this as also a market opportunity. So if you're well ahead of the legislation, it could also be a market opportunity for you to substitute. And substitution, as we talked about yesterday, is of course not just only to shift from one chemical to another. It's about different techniques, other materials, or to phase out or find other ways to what you're sort of intended to do. Okay, but not to start with my question, how to boost innovation, but more start on the other way around, how to hamper innovation. And I just want to state this because maybe you will sort of get my point easier. We see a problem that if the process here for authorization and the application for authorization is disfavoring companies that are producing or using alternatives to substances of very, very high concern, we're sort of going the wrong way. We are not focusing on innovation and substitution and boosting that, which we think is needed. So if you would, as there are draft decisions now proposing to give authorization when alternatives are clearly available for like DHP, for this broad use, for HBCDD, as we heard yesterday, we know that there are alternatives, and also the lead chromates, where companies producing and using the alternatives have, in some of these cases, also stated in the public consultations that they have alternatives, that it is possible to substitute, that they don't see the need for an authorization. So here we see that it's important that the focus is that when you can substitute, that should be done. So you will boost the ones focusing on substitution and innovation instead of helping and getting market shares for the ones not doing that. So it's a sort of, you need to choose your way here. So just to state a few quotes from companies, we have AkzoNobel, who stated regarding this lead chromate draft decision that, I will not read all, but just the orange part, as safer and effective alternatives to lead chromate pigments are available for industrial paints and have been successfully accepted in the marketplace. We are surprised that the EU looks to set a grant authorization for the continued use of lead chromates in this paint for at least 12 years under REACH. So here we have a company who have a substitute, it's available, but still the draft decision is that another producer will get an authorization for 12 years to do this. Well, we also have the response from Chemtura to the public consultation on application for authorization for HBCDD. And they say granting this authorization will cause an economic disadvantage to those companies who have invested resources in substituting HBCDD. It will stifle innovation in the European industry to develop substances with improved toxicology profiles and run counter to the policy objectives underpinning the authorization process. I mean, this is very, clear words, my word. And if these will also lead to a few things, that in the future, if this message is given from the Commission, companies will tend maybe not to focus this much on finding substitute and focus on innovation. And that is the real problem. If the message from here is not clear enough that the focus should be innovation and substitution, then that is, it doesn't sort of go with the intentions of REACH. It will also lead to confusion, because what these companies are saying is that they get confused. So what are we talking about? What are the intentions? Are the intentions that we should get market opportunities here because we have put money and resources in developing alternatives? Or would our competitors who stick with the substance of very high concern get the market advantage? We also think that doing this will lead to more companies choosing to go down the road to apply for authorization when they don't really need to, when they actually could walk down the road of substitution instead. And we don't see that that is a very efficient way. So, I mean, when you then have to apply for authorization, then it just makes clear that sometimes that is, of course, needed. And to get efficient applications, we talked about that yesterday, so just very briefly repeat that, I mean, it's important to make clear exact what information is needed from the applicant. And, I mean, that is in the discussions, really, so glad about that. And clear guidelines from ECHA, we talked about that as well. And to also support in defining the usage. I think you mentioned all of this, Jack, so I don't need to go more into detail about this. We agree on all these things. So back to now to my original question. How to encourage future applicants to focus on substitution and innovation? Well, from our point of view, it's about to follow the intentions of REACH and with a clear communication. And not just communication, just the guidelines. I'm not just talking about that. That is an important part, but it's actual what you're actually doing. The actual message you're giving to industry, what to focus on. So if I start with the ECHA part here, we think it's very important that ECHA will help companies on how to work with substitution, with substances they use are identified as a substance of very high concern. So already when they add it to the candidate list, not telling them that they need to substitute, but they need to start looking. Because if they do that, they realize that they will have a choice. Okay, I might find a substitute. I could go for that one already now, or at least I know it when I need to substitute. If you don't start very early in this process, you will be faced with very short time frames for when you need to phase the substance out, which is very costly. So it's more efficient from many point of view, also the economic point of view, to phase it out, to start the work very early, at least to identify. And if you don't start early, well, you're not prepared to substitute, and you're not even, as we heard yesterday, prepared to write a good application for authorization. Because if you have done this homework and looked at substitution possibilities, you also have an easier task when writing an application for authorization. Makes it more clear. And also to communicate that substances of very concern should be phased out when they're added to Annex 14 when alternatives are available. We talked about that it's important not to say that substance adding to Annex 14 that it's a total ban. That's true, but you also need to say that when an alternative is available, you should focus on that, and you should work to substitute that chemical. And also to communicate the benefits with substitution. And we heard about that ECHA has lots of ideas and work here during this coming year to help companies more on these issues, and we are very glad that you will do that. And for the Commission to give the right message, it's of course important not to give authorization when alternatives are available and economically feasible. It will create confusion in industry. And also just to give authorization for very well-defined uses and for a suitable time frame. Also to make it very clear for industry. Okay, just to finish off, I mean, many companies support REACH. And they work exactly the same way with substitution at an early stage. And many more are sort of fine with REACH. They can live with it. So they work with substitution, and if possible, they will apply for authorization. But to not cause confusion, we need to give time to make this process work. It's still a young process, so we need to make it right and set all the limits. But to stimulate companies to focus on substitution and innovation, Commission also needs to continue to put substances on Annex 14. to give companies producing and using alternatives possibility to get market shares. And with that, I'd like to end. And ChemSec also sort of condensed all our concerns and also gathered some company quotes regarding REACH and regarding authorization process. I think those are interesting for you to read. So just come to me afterwards and you can have this. Thank you very much.